This is the African Tech Roundup. I'm Andile Masugu. Welcome to it. I'm here in conversation with Yahya Banafa. He's head of network planning and engineering at Safaricom, Ethiopia. Welcome to the African Tech Roundup, Yahya.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for making time. Let's start with what on earth your role entails. For people who aren't familiar with the mobile telco space, or indeed what it takes to plan a network and lead engineering efforts, what is it you do?
Yeah, so network planning and engineering basically is looking at designing of the network. It's easy when you say you have a network, but it's always difficult to know where do you start.
Yeah.
And that is the essence of the planning and engineering function. It cuts across different business functions. You need to understand what is the driver for building that network. You need to understand what are the regulatory obligations of building the network. You need to look at the interfaces with commercial as well as financing of the projects. And then you put it together into a multifaceted kind of dimensioning that ensures that you have built a network that serves all those facets.
No pressure.
But at the same time, without pressure, ensuring that you are serving the customers with the right quality of service.
Yeah.
Because at some point also, from a regulatory perspective, there are very strict quality of services targets that we need to make sure that we adhere to. So my role touches on all those interfaces.
Plus the engineering aspect.
Yes. So it touches on the human aspect.
Because you don't have enough work to do. So let's just do everything you said plus some engineering. Some tech teams and executional stuff too.
Yeah. So we are looking at, from a radio perspective. So identifying locations where we should put our base stations. That would then make sure that whatever we have deployed meets the right quality of service. But also, if you see the towers, that's where you generate your traffic. How do you evacuate that traffic? So you need to have plan for transmission connectivity design. And then once you evacuate the traffic, it's synonymous with generation of energy. So you generate your power, you put it on transmission power lines, and deploy. And go and switch it somewhere. So it means you need to have a core network where you switch your traffic. How do you push your traffic out to the internet? How do you ensure connectivity end to end? But also, how do you energize all those specific domains?
Wow.
So in a nutshell.
So context here for listeners and viewers who might not be aware of just how nascent Safaricom Ethiopia is. We won't get into the history and actually the dramatic fashion in which it came to be, but effectively you're operating on a blank slate, as it were, right? With the legacy experience of easily one of Africa's, but also East Africa's most prolific mobile telcos and everything they've achieved. But then you're also dealing with Ethiopia, second largest population on the continent, a very specific socioeconomic profile and geopolitical challenge. Just a fascinating dynamic in order to start from scratch and ask yourself, how do we set up a network the best way we can? Am I breaking it down in the way you thought about it, or is this a little too dramatic?
No, you've said it very passionately. Which
I love Ethiopia. Can you tell?
Definitely. Yeah. So I think we find ourselves in a very unique kind of setup where it is very difficult to see anywhere in the world today that you'd be setting up a network from scratch.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of the task. Why? Because we have been able to leverage on the historical experience, but also looking at the future and apply the knowledge base. We have great global expertise, which is an advantage that we have with Safaricom Ethiopia.
And this is also post the mobile adoption boom on the continent. So it's that you've got these interesting headwinds as well.
Yeah. So we've been able to leverage on what we know. We've been able to look at the future and see what would come. And we've applied those technologies and those learnings to be able to build a beautiful network. Yeah.
He calls it beautiful. But here's the tough question. What didn't you see coming? What did Ethiopia throw your way and you went, whoa, 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 whoa. Come on, Ethiopia. What's going on here? Like give us the juice, man. Like what was the most unexpected?
So the most difficult part is the readiness. I think adapting to the country, looking at, having to work with different cultures. For me personally, that was a challenge. However, 3 years on, I think I have been able to adapt to it.
Are you talking corporately? Are you talking about the customer? Both?
Corporately, as well as from a customer perspective. Looking at the relationships that we needed to foster in terms of partnerships, there is no way you would build a network without partnerships. Yeah? So, having to have discussions, interesting discussions with your competition and making them aware that this is not a zero-sum game, that we can still develop the market, that sharing infrastructure is a good thing, was difficult, but at the same time, there's a learning. Yeah? So you keep on learning. Engagements with the regulator, there are so many things, having one operator in the country, there are so many things that became an opportunity to shape regulation. Which is, I think, was a challenge in the beginning. But however, we have a very supportive structure from a regulatory perspective.
I know there was a very fierce banking lobby that particularly on the mobile money question.
Exactly.
They were like, Safaricom, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
But on the mobile money thing, can you not disrupt banking? Which is really interesting position for Safaricom to be in Ethiopia after experiencing similar pushback in Kenya and overcoming that. What do you think? What are some of the lessons from expressing that mutual benefit argument do you think has carried over from your experience in Kenya into Ethiopia?
You look at the impact of mobile money to the ecosystem. For example, if you are in Kenya today, you'd never, carry cash, yeah? And it goes ahead to products, the kind of solutions we've been able to deploy, the support for agribusiness, the support for, transactions, transferring of money. A farmer in a very deep rural area is able to transact with his bank without any challenge. So it opens up the economy in one way or the other.
And I suppose the question is, how is that not just good for Safaricom? How do you make that case to a banking fraternity that is not used to sharing that space with a telco?
Yeah, so it encourages innovation. I think at the end of the day, it's a win-win. Yeah, so the banking sector would see it as competition, but in the end, it facilitates, transactions to happen, which is a win also for the banking sector. So initially, any change with any technology comes with a lot of resistance, but eventually, once you start seeing the advantages, I think it plays out to everybody's advantage.
You know what, we were talking offline about how you had to adapt to the altitude difference between Nairobi and Addis, where you're based now. From a practical sort of technical perspective, geek out for a second, because a lot of our audience and viewers are tech heads and completely understand the challenges of what it means to be in the network space. What did Ethiopia as a unique and distinctive terrain present as a challenge to Safaricom in terms of setting up relative to other markets you've been?
Yeah, so speaking about altitude, I think maybe I should have mentioned it as one of the challenges that I had. Addis Ababa is 2,400 meters above sea level. What does that mean? That means with altitude, humans have difficulties with, breathing. Yeah, they have difficulties with sleeping. Yeah, but with time, with exposures, on the same altitude for some time, your body is able to adjust. Yeah, so you manufacture more red blood cells, and somehow you adapt. You adapt to the reality. So the altitude is one aspect, but the terrain is another aspect. So what we have tried to do is we use the terrain as much as possible to be able to ensure we have the best coverage. Yeah, in places, for example, that you need to build a 60-meter towers, which is costly, is not cheap. You would rather find some optimal kind of terrain that you would place your towers, yeah, without scaling, without building a tower that is too high, for example. Yeah. We also have cases where the terrain is really flat. Yeah, so population is settled along the Rift Valley. which is something that we've tried to use as much as possible to be able to have continuity in terms of coverage. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking now, in terms of, things that Safaricom has done right, or really, really well in bringing M-Pesa to market as, just packaging it so beautifully as a local innovation people can embrace. I think is as much an innovation in, the technology and platform itself as it is a masterclass in how to bring it to market in a way that's relevant and embraced by a local population.
Yeah.
What is it about Safaricom that had to sort of adapt to Ethiopian sensibilities, as a brand, as a proposition?
So what we looked at, for example, even before we get to M-Pesa, is the establishment of a telco business. Yeah. So, for example, today we are in the process of doing 5G. Yeah. So which is an adaptation to what we have seen to be what the customer wants. Yeah. For example, we've looked at. Initially, our assumptions on devices was not very aggressive on data usage. Yeah. We assumed that Ethiopia would have a device ecosystem that is synonymous with any other market. But the more you roll out, the more you generate insights, and you discover that people are actually interested in data services. So that pushes us to be able to make sure that we deploy a network that is ready. Not for now, but also for the future in terms of the technologies that we do. So we have a couple of sites that are on 5G. We have
that on launch, or was that as you made that realization?
Yeah, it's as we realize, and it's part of the roadmap, because you have to start definitely with the lower technologies, with the assumptions that the device ecosystem is whatever the insights you will generate. Yeah, you will look for partnerships with different device inside inputs, but the more you build your network, the more you discover what the customer is doing, and it helps you to make the right decision. So we started off having 2G, 3G technologies, but then we made an application.
Come on, we want a TikTok.
Yeah, exactly. So the very heavy usage. If you look at demographics, for example, 3 million Ethiopians turn 18 every year.
By the way, I said TikTok intentionally because from what I understand, I've learned from some of your colleagues, the prolific use of that age group of the likes of TikTok, for example, would blow some people's minds.
Exactly. And if you look at it, you see 3 million Ethiopians turning 18 every year. That's a new market. Yeah. The population of Lesotho, for example,
every year
is 2 million. Yeah. So it's Lesotho. We are adding Lesotho into market potential every year. So, which is very heavy on data. So with TikTok, with Instagram, with YouTube, it pushes us to be able to be very aggressive in terms of how do we provision our services. Yeah. And we factored that in terms of the technologies that we've deployed. For example, our core today is a unified core. Yeah, cloud-based, meaning we are able to scale in, scale out resources, which is an advantage to many of the operators that we have in Africa today, based on legacy systems that they have. It's difficult to have that kind of scale in, scale out. Yeah.
So, in part because, I imagine, and correct me if I'm wrong, in part because there's been substantial investment in terrestrial-based, infrastructure that, one would like, some would like to see sweated and return.
Yeah.
But I suppose progress doesn't wait for that, does it?
Yeah, definitely. So, with those kind of learnings, it puts us in the right kind of frame to be able to support the population of Ethiopia to close on any digital gaps that we have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So let's talk the future, because you touched about it. You mentioned, having to build with foresight and think about where the market is going, not just in terms of sheer growth, but also trends, maybe competitive trends. And perhaps, and you tell me, this is an opportunity to build completely different accounting for things like, satellite providers for the internet. How are you thinking about the future in terms of a perhaps competitive, if it's a spectrum, a competitive landscape versus a more collaborative landscape accounting for things like Starlink and others.
Yeah.
How are you approaching this in a greenfield space like Ethiopia?
Yeah, so I think it's always good to have an open mind. If you look at, for example, some of these solutions that are coming in, you cannot ignore the fact that they will create a wave. Yeah. So Starlink, for instance, just to give an example, is a solution that will eventually help to connect people, and you want to at least have some sort of partnership, at least have some engagement. What can they do? What can you do? Yeah, you can always complement on each other. So the open-mindedness is one perspective that we cannot lock out competition. We have to work together. At the end of the day is what I alluded to earlier. Yeah, it's not a zero-sum game. There's opportunity for everyone. And
is it easier for you being in a market that's fresh and new? Maybe are you at the tip of kind of defining what collaboration can look like, because it's like a fresh
definitely yes, but at the same time it needs engagements with all the players. So the regulatory function has to come in. There has to be there has to be a permissive kind of environment where you will allow these kind of engagements. But the main focus is not about winning for the operators or whoever the service provider is. It's about ensuring that you have passion for the customer. Yeah. So once you deliver the right service with the right quality, and the customer is happy with the services that you're providing, given that you have a mix of solutions that you'll be able to give, then it creates some satisfaction within the organizations, within the operators' ecosystem, and that's what it's all about.
Right. Yeah. So I'll close with a reflective question, which will sort of challenge you to think about yourself on day one of this role, which was how long ago?
3 years ago.
3 years ago. So 3 years ago, Yahya is just one day into his role at Safaricom Ethiopia. You get to give him one piece of advice that will make the next 3 years a little less challenging than they've been, perhaps a little smoother or more productive. What's that piece of advice for Yahya?
I think the biggest piece of advice I would give Yahya is to tell him, soldier on. Yeah, it's tough. Yeah, you will have headwinds. But
what did Yahya think this is going to be a walk in the park?
Well, yeah, yes, I think it's easy before you do it. But then once you start doing it, you will encounter challenges. So there will be headwinds, but there will also be tailwinds that eventually you'll be able to fly. Yeah. So and you'll be able to be successful. That's the biggest advice that I will give Yahya.
On that inspirational note, Yahya Banafa, thank you so much for being on the African Tech Roundup, man.
Thank you, and thank you to Novacom for having me.